My name is Audrey Sullivan. Last Christmas, while scrolling through Facebook, I saw a photo that nearly knocked the breath out of me. My parents were grinning on a Caribbean cruise, arms around my younger brother, Ryan, and his wife. The caption read, "Finally taking our real family on the vacation they deserve." Real family. That phrase burned, because there was no ticket for me, no phone call, no text, just silence. And it wasn't just one vacation. It was years of being pushed aside, of being the dependable one, the one who sent checks when the heater broke, when Ryan's business failed, when hospital bills piled up. I was the safety net, the invisible backbone. That picture didn't just show me who was on the boat, it showed me, clear as day, who wasn't. It had been nearly a year since I last set foot inside my parents' house in Bellevue, Colorado. A year of unanswered calls, a year of skipped birthdays, a year of excuses. So when my mother texted me, "Small dinner. Just us. Sunday. 6 p.m. No fuss." I stared at the message, suspicious. No fuss wasn't my mother's style. She could lace a single sentence with guilt and flowers of sarcasm until it weighed you down. But this text was stripped bare, almost polite. That alone made me uneasy. Still, I went. The December air was sharp when I pulled up to the old Sullivan house. The porch light still flickered, just as it had since 2012 when Dad swore he'd fix it. Cracks in the driveway spidered outward, patched half-heartedly with gravel. On the outside, nothing had changed. Inside, though, the air was thick. The smell hit me the moment the door opened. Baked chicken and lemon polish, comfort and control, my mother's signature pairing. "There she is," Mom said, her voice dripping with forced sweetness. "Hi, Mom," I murmured, stepping inside. The living room was the same as ever, except the photos told a story of who mattered. Ryan's football trophies, Ryan's wedding photos, Ryan cutting the ribbon at his failed business launch. My own photo, a dusty snapshot from college graduation, was tucked behind a ceramic angel on the shelf, barely visible. Ryan was slouched on the couch, glass of wine in one hand, scrolling Instagram with the other. He didn't bother to stand. "Hey, stranger," he muttered. His wife, Lauren, sat perched beside him, lashes too long, hair curled just so. She didn't look up from her phone. Dad was at the dining table, swirling bourbon in his glass like it held some kind of answer. He nodded once at me, then returned to his drink. And then I saw it. The dining table set with folded cloth napkins and lit candles. Our family wasn't a cloth napkin family. We weren't even a paper napkin family. At Thanksgiving, we used paper towels. So this? This meant something was staged. We sat down to eat. At first, it was almost normal, polite chatter about the weather. Mom asked vaguely about my work at the architecture firm. I said a few words, but Lauren cut me off, turning the spotlight back to herself, rambling about her lifestyle blog. Ryan cracked half-hearted jokes no one laughed at. Dad kept swirling his bourbon. Halfway through the meal, Ryan leaned forward, putting his fork down with the kind of theatrical pause that made my stomach clench. "So, just so we're clear," he said, "the will is finalized. The house, the cabin, everything. It's going to me." My fork slipped from my hand. "I'm sorry, what?" Mom dabbed her mouth delicately, as if she were the star of some period drama. "Audrey, you're doing fine. You have your firm, your apartment in the city. You don't need any of this." Lauren smirked, raising her glass. "Honestly, Audrey, it's selfish to want more when you already have so much." I looked at my father. He didn't meet my eyes. Just took another slow sip of bourbon. Heat surged through me. Rage, hurt, disbelief. I thought of all the times I had saved them. The mortgage I covered for 5 years when Dad's company went under. The 3 credit cards I paid off for Ryan. The emergency transfers to Lauren when she accidentally overdrew their account. The hospital bills I covered after Mom's surgery when their insurance didn't. I had carried them, quietly, willingly, without ever asking for anything in return, and now they were erasing me. Mom's voice was calm, almost rehearsed. "You've always been the strong one, Audrey. You don't need us, and we don't need to burden you with this. Burden. That word landed like a punch. My sacrifice is reduced to a burden. I pushed my chair back slowly, deliberately. My napkin fell onto the table with a soft thud. My voice was steady, almost cold. You've made your decision. Now I've made mine. Mom's lips parted, maybe to spin it again, maybe to sweeten the knife. But I didn't wait to hear. I walked out, past the flickering porch light into the cold Colorado night. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just walked. My breath sharp in the December air, my hands steady, my heart breaking but lighter than it had been in years. Because for the first time, I understood the truth. I wasn't their daughter. I was their safety net. And I was done. I drove home that night in silence. No radio, no phone calls, no tears. Just the sound of my tires cutting through the cold Colorado dark. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles ached, but I didn't loosen them. I needed to hold on to something solid because everything else, every illusion I had about my family was gone. The house lights of Bellevue faded in the rearview mirror, and I thought back to all the times I had saved them. At 25, I was the one who signed over half my savings to keep Mom and Dad's mortgage afloat when Dad's construction business went under. At 30, when Ryan maxed out 3 credit cards chasing a startup dream, I wrote the checks without hesitation. At 35, when Mom needed surgery and the insurance refused to cover the anesthesia, I paid the hospital directly. And countless times in between, I sent money, canceled vacations, worked overtime because family, I told myself, meant sacrifice. Except the sacrifice had only ever gone one way. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, my throat was raw, not from crying, but from holding it all in. Inside, I tossed my keys onto the counter and dropped my coat over the back of the chair. The scent of lemon polish and roasted chicken from earlier clung to me like a ghost. I poured a glass of Cabernet, one I had been saving for a celebration that now seemed laughable. I didn't sit. I just stood at the window watching the reflection of the city lights shimmer in the glass. My reflection stared back at me, tired, taut, like a stranger wearing my face. And then, almost without thinking, I reached for my phone, not to scroll through social media or call a friend. I opened my banking app, line after line of payments stretched across the screen, each one tied to a memory I had been carrying alone. $2,300 every month for the mortgage. $500 for utilities, $12,000 transferred when Ryan's car was repossessed, $18,000 for his boot camp after he quit his job to find himself, $40,000 for renovations at the lake cabin, plumbing, paint, patients, thousands more for groceries, insurance premiums, and emergency transfers. Every single number was a piece of my life I had given away. Every transaction a quiet promise. Maybe this time they'll see me. Maybe this time they'll love me like they love him. But they never did. And staring at those numbers, the truth settled heavy in my chest. I wasn't their daughter. I was their bank account. The realization cut deeper than I expected. For years, I had told myself that my role in the family was noble, that being the strong one, the dependable one, made me indispensable. I thought love could be earned through sacrifice, that if I gave enough, carried enough, I would finally belong. But what I was, in reality, was invisible. The invisible scaffold holding up a family who never once looked up to see what they were standing on. Ryan's voice from dinner echoed in my head. It's simpler this way. Simpler. Yes, it was simpler for them to erase me, to pretend the years of support never happened, to write me out of their lives without guilt, because in their eyes, I was strong enough to survive without them. I sank onto the edge of my couch, the phone still glowing in my hand. The screen burned like evidence of love unacknowledged, of devotion unreciprocated, of exploitation disguised as family. And then another voice echoed my mother's, calm and cold. You don't need us. We don't need to burden you with this. Burden. I exhaled long and slow, and I said it out loud, my voice steady in the stillness of the room. They don't love me. They use me. The words didn't bring tears. They brought clarity. I stared at the screen again, at the rows of recurring payments set to auto-deduct like clockwork. And for the first time in years, I tapped cancel. Cancel mortgage. Cancel utilities. Cancel emergency fund. Each confirmation box popped up with the same question. Are you sure? Yes, yes, yes. It felt like scripture, those 3 letters, like carving a new commandment into stone. When the last payment disappeared from the schedule, the quiet in the room shifted. It wasn't empty. It wasn't sad. It was light. Like air I hadn't breathed in decades, finally filling my lungs. Relief washed over me. Not fireworks, not triumph, just a quiet pulse of freedom. I took another sip of wine, letting the taste linger on my tongue. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't their fallback plan. I wasn't their fixer. I wasn't their fool. I was done. The next morning, the world didn't end. The sun rose over Bellevue, the city buzzed, and I went to work. But something in me was different. My team noticed before I did. In meetings, I was sharper, more present. I wasn't distracted by phantom text messages asking for just a little help this month. I wasn't calculating in my head how to cover their bills on top of mine. I ate lunch without nausea curling in my stomach. I walked through my apartment without the invisible weight dragging behind me. At night, I slept without checking my phone every hour. For a fleeting moment, I almost believed I was free. But then, Friday came. I was at the office late, reviewing floor plan elevations when my phone buzzed. The preview didn't show the words, just the name, Mom. I hesitated before opening it. The message read, "We sacrifice so much for you. You should be ashamed. Family doesn't walk away like this. No hello, no are you okay, no apology, just a weapon wrapped in guilt." My hand tightened around the phone. For years, those words would have gutted me. For years, I would have bent over backward to prove I wasn't ungrateful, that I wasn't cruel. But that night, I just stared at the message, and for the first time, I didn't reply. For a few days, silence followed. No calls, no texts, no emergency. Venmo requests from Ryan. Not even one of Mom's late-night voicemails laced with guilt. At first, it felt like peace, a strange, fragile quiet that I hadn't known in years. I poured myself into work, back-to-back meetings at the firm, sketching proposals for a wellness center, reviewing permits. My colleagues noticed the change. "You seem lighter," one of them said, almost surprised, and it was true. Without the constant drain of family demands, I had energy, focus. For a moment, I thought maybe they had finally accepted my decision. But families like mine don't let go. They retaliate. It started on a Tuesday morning. I was sipping coffee at my desk when my assistant knocked softly. "Audrey, you might want to check Instagram." My stomach tightened. I opened the app and there it was, Ryan's account, a carousel of photos, each overlaid with bold white text like inspirational quotes. "Some people pretend to support you, but secretly tear down everything you love. Just ask our mom." The next slide showed him and Mom, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like a Hallmark card. Caption, "Real loyalty never wavers." I didn't have to scroll the comments, but I did anyway. "She's always been jealous. If you can't trust your own sister, who can you trust? Audrey only cares about money." Each line landed like a sting, not because they were strangers' words, but because I knew Ryan had planted the narrative himself. For years, I had carried him. Now he was painting me as the villain. I set my phone down carefully, like if I moved too fast, the rage would spill over. By Friday, Mom joined in. She left a voicemail, her tone clipped, icy. "We didn't raise you to be this cruel. This is still your family. You should be ashamed." Cruel. That was the word she chose. Not ungrateful, not cold cruel. And yet, I remembered every bill I had paid, every debt I had cleared. Was that cruel? Or was it simply inconvenient now that I'd stopped? The real blow came the following week. I had worked late and walked home, carrying a sandwich in one hand and my laptop bag in the other. My apartment building's elevator was out again, so I climbed the stairs, tired but relieved to be home. When I reached my door, I froze. The lock wouldn't turn. I tried again, harder, nothing. And then I saw it. Thick foam sprayed into every seam of the doorframe. Hard white insulation hardened into place. My lock, my hinges, every inch sealed shut. It wasn't just vandalism. It was a message. My breath caught in my chest. For a long moment, all I could do was stare. Then anger surged, hot and sharp. I dropped my bag, pulled out my phone, and opened the security app linked to the camera I had installed months earlier. I rewound the footage. There. Timestamp. 2:43 a.m. A figure in a hoodie, big sunglasses despite the dark, gloves on their hands, and around their wrist, a bright pink scrunchie I recognized instantly. Lauren, my brother's wife. She laughed as she sprayed the foam into my lock, flipping the bird at the camera before disappearing down the stairwell. I exhaled slowly. No panic, no tears. I saved the footage, backed it up twice. One to the cloud, one to an external drive. Then, without hesitation, I opened my laptop and emailed my attorney, the same one who had helped me through a messy zoning dispute years earlier. Subject line, urgent harassment evidence. I attached the video and hit send. I didn't want revenge. I wanted accountability. That night, I checked into a small hotel 3 blocks away, paid with my business card, ordered tea I didn't drink. On my laptop, the footage played on loop, not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember. I needed the image burned into me, the evidence that my intuition had been right all along. This wasn't family conflict anymore. This was war. 2 days later, a text arrived, short, cold, from Mom. Family meeting, Sunday, 6 p.m. Come home, we deserve a conversation. No question mark, no please, just a command. I stared at the screen for a long time. Once I would have gone without hesitation, desperate to keep the peace, desperate to earn a place at the table. But now, I wasn't desperate anymore. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their silent bank. I was something they had never expected, a woman who finally knew her worth. That Sunday evening, I drove past the Sullivan house. The porch light flickered as always. Ryan's truck was in the driveway. Lauren's SUV parked at the curb. Inside, I knew the table would be staged again. Napkins folded, candles lit, like they were preparing for an audience that mattered. But I didn't park. Not this time. I drove on, past the house, past the ghosts of my sacrifices, past the weight of their expectations. And as I merged onto the highway heading back toward the city, a thought surfaced so clear it almost startled me. They wanted to drag me back into the fire, but I don't owe them that. Not anymore. The road stretched ahead, dark and open. For the first time in years, it felt like mine. The following week passed in a haze. Work kept me occupied, site visits, client pitches, endless design revisions, but beneath it all, a steady current of dread hummed, because I knew it wasn't over. Families like mine didn't let silence stand. They filled it with accusations, with drama, with whatever noise they could make. And sure enough, Thursday evening, the message came again. Sunday, 6 p.m. family meeting. Don't make this worse. No signature, just the words, dropped like a summons. I didn't reply. But I knew I would go, not because they ordered me, not because I owed them, but because it was time. For years, I had been their silent backbone, their fixer in the shadows. They thought my silence meant weakness. But silence can be a weapon, too, and mine was about to end. Sunday came cold and gray. The Sullivan house looked smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the weight of what I now knew, that so much of myself had been poured into its walls, its foundation, its mortgage, a house that stood because of me, but never for me. I parked at the curb. My heart thudded steady but firm. Inside, the stage was set. Ryan leaned against the fireplace mantel, arms crossed like he was delivering a TED Talk. Lauren perched at the far end of the couch, chin lifted, lips pursed, as if daring me to look at her. Mom sat at the armrest, legal pad balanced on her lap. And Dad swirled bourbon in his glass, gaze fixed anywhere but mine. No one greeted me. Mom spoke first, her voice calm, rehearsed. "We need to clear the air." I didn't sit. Ryan tilted his head. "This isn't how families act, Audrey. You blew this out of proportion. We're trying to fix this, and you're making it worse." My pulse stayed steady. "Fix this?" I asked. "You mean erase me from the will, call me cruel, seal my apartment door shut? That's what you call fixing?" Lauren's eyes flashed. "You can't prove that was me." I raised a brow. "Really? Because my security camera says otherwise." I reached into my bag and slid my phone across the table. The video played, silent but damning. Lauren laughing, pink scrunchie dangling as she sprayed the foam across my door. The room went still. Ryan shifted uncomfortably. "So what, you went to a lawyer?" "I did," I said simply. Silence pressed heavy against the walls. For once, even Mom's mask cracked. Her jaw tightened. "You're threatening your own family?" I met her gaze, steady. "Number, I'm warning you." I stepped back, voice firm, almost like I was delivering a closing argument. "This is the last time I walk into this house for a meeting like this. The next time, I won't be polite. I won't hold back. I won't protect anyone from the consequences of their actions." I let my eyes land on each of them. "Ryan, you've built a life on debts I paid. Lauren, you think cruelty can be hidden under filters and captions. But I've got receipts. Mom, you called me cruel, but you sat silent while they drained me dry. And Dad," I turned to him. He looked down into his bourbon as if the amber liquid might swallow him whole. "You let it happen." Ryan's face reddened. "You're acting like we put a gun to your head. You chose to help." "No," I said. My voice didn't rise, but it cut. "You held need, you held guilt, and you used both like leverage. For years, Mom clicked her pen against the legal pad, a sharp staccato. You didn't communicate, you just cut us off. That's not how adults handle things." I laughed, low and bitter. "I'm not your bank, Mom. I don't owe you a press release every time I say no." Lauren muttered something under her breath. "Martyr." I didn't flinch. "You don't get to rewrite history just because the truth is uncomfortable. Every month, I made sure this house didn't collapse. When Mom had surgery, I paid the anesthesia coverage. When Ryan crashed his car, I covered the ER bill. When your credit cards were repossessed, Lauren, I bailed you out. And not once," my voice sharpened, "not once did anyone say thank you." Mom's lips pressed thin. "We assumed you knew." Assumed. The word hit me like ice. The same way you assumed I'd be fine with being erased from the will? The same way you assumed I'd stay quiet when my apartment was vandalized? Ryan scoffed, trying for bravado. "You won't actually take this to court. You wouldn't." I leaned forward, calm, cold. "Try me." The air in the room shifted, thick and uneasy. For the first time, I saw something in their eyes, not love, not guilt, but fear. Mom broke the silence. "You're being dramatic." I straightened, tucking my phone back into my bag. "Number, I'm being done." I walked to the door, my steps deliberate, my coat swinging loose at my sides. Behind me, the silence buzzed. No one followed. As I opened the door, the last of the daylight filtered through the porch. Across the street, Mrs. Cardwell, our elderly neighbor, stood watering her azaleas. She paused, meeting my eyes. She didn't look surprised. She didn't look pitying. She just nodded, slow and steady, like she'd been watching all along. For a moment, I felt something unspoken pass between us. Understanding. Recognition. That night, driving back toward the city, I realized something. I had spent years begging for a place at a table that was never meant for me. Years twisting myself into knots for people who saw me only as useful, never as worthy. But in that living room, as I stood facing them, as I laid down every truth they wanted buried, something shifted. For the first time, I wasn't begging. I wasn't trying. I was standing. And that felt like freedom. For a few days after I walked out of that living room, I thought maybe it was over. The phone stayed quiet. No angry texts. No guilt-laced voicemails. No demands for money. I let myself believe in that silence. I cooked real meals for the first time in months. I read a book without my mind racing to calculate who I might need to rescue next. I slept deep, dreamless. But in my family, silence never meant peace. Silence was just the inhale before the scream. It began on a Tuesday. My coworker slid her phone across the conference table with an uneasy look. "Have you seen this?" she whispered. On Instagram, Ryan had posted a smiling photo of himself and Mom on the porch of the lake cabin. The caption read, "Real children don't abandon their parents when they need them most. Some people only stick around as long as the check's clear." The comments multiplied. Audrey always seemed cold. "Your sister is ungrateful. Sad when money means more than family." I scrolled once, twice, then closed the app. My pulse was steady, but inside something shifted. For years I had been invisible. Now I was visible, but through a lens they had twisted. 3 days later, I found a white envelope taped to my apartment door. Inside, a letter accusing me of elder abuse, claiming I had stolen from Mom's retirement fund. The signature was clumsy, the formatting wrong, but the intent was sharp. Not just to shame me, to destroy me. I photographed it, saved it, sent it to my lawyer. Within an hour, he replied, "This is forgery. Don't worry, we'll add it to the file." Piece by piece, I was stacking evidence like bricks in a wall. On Saturday, I stopped for coffee at the cafe near my apartment. My neighbor, Jasmine, spotted me. She hesitated, then leaned close. "Audrey, I saw something last week. Lauren was outside your building. She was bragging on the phone about sealing your door shut. Said you'd finally learn a lesson." Her words made my chest tighten, but also settle. Proof, not just mine. Someone else had seen it. I asked quietly, "Would you be willing to write that down?" She nodded, no hesitation. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing alone. That night, Mom texted again. "You should be ashamed. We gave you life. Family doesn't treat each other this way." I stared at the screen, then set the phone face down. Instead, I opened my laptop. And for hours, I pulled together everything they wanted buried. Bank transfers for the mortgage, utility bills in my name, medical receipts from Mom's surgery, screenshots of Ryan's "just this once" messages, renovation invoices for the cabin, the security video of Lauren spraying my door, the fake legal letter, Jasmine's testimony, line by line, dollar by dollar, truth lined the page. It wasn't just evidence. It was a record of my life, the life I had given away to people who never once said thank you. By Sunday, I knew silence wasn't protection anymore. It was permission. So I wrote, not a rant, not revenge, just the truth. On Facebook, I laid it out. The payments, the sacrifices, the quiet years of holding them up. I attached the receipts, the screenshots, the video of Lauren at my door, and I ended with one line. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. I won't stay silent so others can stay comfortable. I hit post. Within an hour, the comments poured in. I remember you covering your mom's surgery. Everyone does. Ryan has borrowed from half the town. Don't let him paint you wrong. "You don't deserve this, Audrey." An aunt I hadn't spoken to in a decade chimed in. "Marcy has always used guilt as control. I'm proud of you for finally standing up." Her words lit a match. Dozens of likes. More voices joining in. Ryan tried to clap back vague posts about bitter sisters and family betrayal. But he had no receipts. No evidence. Just performance. For once, people weren't buying it. That night, my lawyer called. His voice was calm, deliberate. Between the vandalism, the forged letter, the witness testimony, and now the public smear, we have more than enough. "Audrey, this isn't a family squabble anymore. This is harassment. It's criminal." I sat at my kitchen table, his words echoing. For years, I had thought the only way to survive was to endure, to absorb the blows, to pay the debts, to stay quiet. But now, I wasn't enduring. I was building. A case, a truth, a life that was mine. They had wanted to erase me. Instead, I had drawn my own line. And this time, I wasn't moving. The morning after my post, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. Notifications stacked on the screen like bricks, comments, shares, messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some were supportive, some were stunned. A few said they weren't surprised at all. But what struck me most were the private messages. Women from my old church, co-workers from years ago, even distant cousins. Each of them had their own story about money borrowed and never returned, about promises broken, about guilt wielded like a weapon. It was as if by telling my truth, I had given others permission to tell theirs. That week, I received an unexpected email from the Neighborhood Association. "Miss Sullivan, we understand you've been dealing with harassment. As this has become a community concern, we'd like to offer you space to speak at our upcoming meeting." I read it twice. My chest tightened. This wasn't just whispers now. This was public. On Thursday evening, I walked into the town hall. Rows of folding chairs, the hum of conversation, neighbors I'd grown up with. Mrs. Cardwell sat in the front row, her azaleas forgotten for the night. Jasmine gave me a small nod from across the room. When my name was called, I stood at the front. My hands trembled once, but only once before I pressed them flat against the table. "I didn't come here tonight to start a fight," I began. "I came because for years I let my silence protect the wrong people." I spoke about the mortgage payments, the medical bills, the renovations. I spoke about the foam sealed into my door, about the forged legal letter, about the smear campaigns online, and then I played the video. Lauren's laughter filled the room, tinny but sharp. Her pink scrunchie glowed against the grainy footage. A ripple of gasps ran through the crowd. When the video ended, I let the silence hang. "This isn't just about family drama," I said softly. "It's about accountability. If any one of you had endured what I have, you wouldn't stay silent either." For a long moment, no one moved. Then slowly, Mrs. Cardwell stood. Her voice carried clear. "She's telling the truth. I've watched that girl carry this family on her back since she was 18. It's about time she stopped." Applause spread like a tide, tentative at first, then stronger. And for the first time in years, I felt something lift. The crushing weight of isolation. Of course, Ryan and Lauren weren't silent for long. That same night, Ryan blasted Facebook with a rant. "Some people love playing the victim. Don't believe everything you see. Families have disagreements. That doesn't make us criminals." But his words rang hollow. People had seen the footage. They had read the receipts. And the more he talked, the smaller he sounded. 2 days later, my attorney filed the paperwork. Harassment, vandalism, defamation, forgery. It wasn't about dragging them to jail. It was about drawing a line, about saying, "You can't keep doing this without consequence." When he called to confirm the filing, his voice was steady. "Audrey, you've built a strong case. They'll have to answer for this, one way or another." I hung up and sat in my quiet kitchen. The clock ticked softly. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like waiting for another blow. It felt like breathing. That weekend, Dad showed up. Not at my apartment, but at the cafe where I worked on designs. He looked smaller somehow, shoulders bent, bourbon nowhere in sight. He cleared his throat, voice rough. I saw the video. I didn't know it had gone that far. I looked at him. Years of silence. Years of complicity. Part of me wanted to spit fire. Another part, tired, worn, just waited. I can't undo what I let happen, he said quietly, but I can tell the truth if you need me to. I searched his face. There were no grand gestures, no sudden redemption, just weariness, and maybe a flicker of guilt too late. Still, I nodded once. If you mean that, put it in writing. He nodded back. For once, he didn't argue. By Sunday, the shift was undeniable. Neighbors stopped me on the street, not with pity, but with respect. A woman at the grocery store squeezed my hand. Thank you for saying what so many of us never could. And me? I felt lighter. Not because the fight was over, but because I wasn't hiding anymore. For years, I had carried their secrets, their shame, their debts. I thought endurance was love. That silence was loyalty. But standing in that town hall, seeing heads nod, hearing hands clap, I realized something simple but profound. Truth doesn't just set you free, it sets others free too. That night, I sat at my desk with a cup of tea. I opened my journal, the one I hadn't touched in months, and wrote 5 words. I am not their secret. The words didn't erase the past. They didn't undo the pain, but they marked a line, a boundary drawn in ink instead of blood. And for the first time, I believed it. I was building a life not defined by what I endured, but by what I chose. Part 7. The ending. That spring morning, when I stepped out of the city courthouse after the first hearing, I drew in a deep breath. The air was still cold but crisp, and for the first time in years, my lungs felt full instead of heavy. The hearing wasn't some grand trial, just an initial step in the case my lawyer and I had filed. But inside that wooden chamber, everything had been read aloud. The bank transfers, the hospital receipts, the footage of Lauren laughing in the night as she sealed my door, the clumsy forged letter with its shaky signature. None of it was a secret I had to carry anymore. It was all laid bare, undeniable. Ryan raged, his face red, accusing me of fabricating lies. Lauren cried, claiming I was out to destroy her marriage. My mother sat stiff, her face as cold as if this was a theater performance I had staged to betray her. Only my father, seated in the back row, occasionally looked up at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not avoidance, not indifference, but something tangled between guilt and recognition. I hadn't won, nor had I lost. This was only the beginning of the legal process. But as I stepped outside, I knew I had crossed a line. I no longer needed to prove my worth to them. I had proven it to myself. The days that followed still brought storms. Ryan kept posting long rants on Facebook, painting himself as the victim of a smear campaign. Lauren switched her profile picture to black and white, captioning it with mournful words about betrayal from within. My mother sent me long texts, heavy with guilt. Family is blood. You're cutting yourself off from your roots. I didn't reply. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I no longer needed to say it. The truth stood there on its own. People could choose to shut their eyes, but the truth remained. At work, I noticed the change. My colleagues looked at me differently, not with pity, but with respect. They had seen me stand in front of the community, voicing what so many kept hidden. A new client even chose to work with me, saying, "You know what it means to carry weight, but also to let go." My projects flourished. I spent long nights at my drafting table, but not to escape emotions. I worked with focus, with purpose. Every line I drew, every building I designed, felt like another brick in the foundation of the life I was reclaiming. One evening, I received an unexpected call from my father. His voice was rough, hesitant. I know you don't need an apology, but if you'll agree, I'd like to see you. Just us, not them." We met at a small cafe by the park. He arrived early, hunched, hands locked together. His hair had grayed more than I remembered. His shoulders slumped. He no longer resembled the man who had once built the Bellevue house with his own 2 hands. He spoke slowly. "I let it all happen. I didn't protect you. I thought silence would keep the peace. But silence was betrayal. If you need testimony, I'll stand for the truth. Not to redeem myself, but because I know I left you alone for far too long." I studied him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to scream, to pour out years of anger, but another part, tired and wiser, simply nodded. "If you mean it, start by saying it. Not for me, for yourself." He nodded back, his eyes damp. I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but at least for the first time, I had heard the truth from him. Weeks later, the court sent notice. The case was officially accepted and all parties were required to cooperate with the investigation. Lauren vanished from social media. Ryan grew quiet, no more public accusations. My mother still sent her guilt-ridden messages, but less often. Perhaps at last she understood that guilt no longer held power over me. I didn't feel triumph or revenge, just relief, like a heavy door finally creaking open. Summer came. One afternoon, I sat in my apartment, sunlight spilling across my desk. I reopened my journal where I had once written, "I am not their secret." This time, I added a line beneath it, "I am my own story." My phone buzzed, a message from Jasmine, my neighbor who had testified for me. She invited me to join a new community group for women who had been exploited by family through debt, through guilt, through silence. I agreed immediately. Not because I wanted to relive my pain, but because I understood the power of no longer enduring alone. Months passed. My life settled into rhythm. I worked, I walked. Sometimes I met my father for small conversations. He didn't become a perfect parent overnight, but at least he tried. For me, that was enough. One day, driving past the old Bellevue house, I stopped. It looked the same. The cracked roof, the sagging porch, the flickering light above the door. Ryan and Lauren were gone. They had moved on, clinging to whatever narrative suited them. I stood at the curb, staring at the house that had once been the center of my pain. But it no longer weighed me down. It wasn't a symbol of wounds anymore. It was just a house. Wood, bricks, memories, but nothing that bound me. I turned back, walked to my car, and drove away. The sun stretched long across the road. I knew from that moment on, my journey no longer began or ended with that house. That evening, I sat on my balcony looking over the city lights. I thought of the years I had spent trying to prove my worth to a family who never truly saw me. I thought of the sleepless nights, the bills paid with sweat and sacrifice. And I thought of the moment I finally spoke the truth, drawing a line in the sand. Family, I realized, is not defined by blood. Family is those who see you, respect you, and stand with you, not because they need something from you, but because they truly want to be there. For me now, family is Jasmine, my colleagues, and myself when I face the mirror each morning without fear. I lifted my cup of tea, letting the warmth seep into my palms. No strong liquor to steady me, no guilt-soaked texts to remind me of my worth. I belong to myself, and that is the real beginning. After years of silence, of sacrifice, of carrying a family that never saw her, Audrey finally chose herself. She spoke the truth, not to win them back, but to free herself from their grip. And in that freedom, she discovered something greater than blood ties: dignity, self-worth, and the kind of family we choose, the ones who see us, respect us, and stand beside us without conditions. Thank you for watching. If this story spoke to your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, and always remember, you matter, and your love leaves a mark.